Hey Jay.
Gosh, hi.
Hi, 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 hi. Nice to see you or to see your
Y-
photo.
I'm all right.
Okay.
I'm like feeling I'm really sick, so I'm gonna stay on camera.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Well, I'm glad you're
Okay.
joining.
Yeah, I feel like everyone's coming down with something this week.
That was
Yeah.
me last week. It was bad.
Well, we're gonna get started, everyone.
Mm.
Thank you all for being here today for the fireside chat. We are so excited to have Natasha here, Natasha Flores-Makon here. Um, and she's gonna be talking about the future of regenerative chocolate. Before we get into today's fireside chat, I wanted to quickly share a little bit about the Grateful for Giraffes. For those of you who aren't giraffes and are watching on our YouTube live stream, the Grateful Giraffes are a vibrant community of over 800 members who value gratitude, wellness, and impact. And we're both spiritual yet grounded at the same time. And we really are here to create, a world where there is more gratitude in the world, and that takes a lot of precedence in our everyday life. And we come together to co-create meaningful experiences while building community-owned lifestyle brands dedicated to human flourishing. And if you want to watch our other fireside chats, you can go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, or if you're interested in being a giraffe or joining or learning more about the Grateful Giraffes, you can go to gratefulgiraffes.com. So today our fireside chat is with Natasha Flores-Makon. Natasha is a sixth generation chocolatier and an innovative product developer dedicated to creating better for you chocolate items for nationwide private label customers. With a deep-rooted passion for sustainability, she focuses on regenerative sourcing practices that enhance cacao quality while supporting local communities. Combining traditional craftsmanship with modern nutritional insights, Natasha aims to redefine the chocolate experience, making it both delicious and environmentally responsible. She believes in the power of chocolate and bringing joy while contributing to a healthier planet. Welcome, Natasha. We're so excited that you are here.
Thank you. Thank you, Minling. Thank you for the intro. Thanks to everyone for being here.
Yes. And I would love for you to start and share your journey. I mean, you're like the real life Willy Wonka, basically, with, like being a chocolatier. And we would love to share how you, started this journey, not only as your chocolatier journey, but also in regenerative farming.
Hmm. Yeah, I'd love to. Well, I started off because it's been in my family for, like I said, them the sixth generation, so it's been in my life forever. And I feel like that's kind of the thing with kids when you grow up around it. I rejected it. Like I went to school, I studied real estate development. I said like I don't want to touch chocolate. And actually, it was COVID that really turned that around. I got into the food industry in that way. I was going to do a very corporate real estate job that got canceled, and I ended up starting my own health food line. We started off with breads, and that one was called Full of Foods. I did that, I guess, 2021 to 2022. And at that same point, I started to notice. So my dad is the one who set up this formula basically that we operate off of right now, which is private label. So for people who don't know what that really means, it's we don't have our own line, our own brand. We make and manufacture product for people under their lines. And sometimes we do brands, but it's mostly retail stores. And that's like a formula that I grew up with my whole life. I saw my dad doing it, traveling and working, and just his way of being innovative within this space. And for people who are in food in general, CPG, it's a very overcrowded space. So I respected a lot how he found that niche. And I started to notice, okay, this is a formula that can be replicated to not just one customer who's my dad's main customer, but there's how many grocery stores in the United States. And I found my niche within the company because I've always been a health enthusiast with my own body, my own journey. And that was really the focus, was to work with customers who still love chocolate. We all love chocolate. We love the indulgence of chocolate, but can we make it healthier through the recipes, or can we do better for the planet in terms of sourcing? And I'm sure we've all heard, like bean to bar or ceremonial or, that's I love that that side exists, but there's also very needed side for this mass consumer market, like the stores that are really focusing on volume to also have those fundamental values, So that's really my focus here is how can we bring this to scale and really start to make it viable solutions for all of us.
I love how you share your journey because it's so true. Like we reject like something that like it's been in our family for a while, but then when we find new passion, new life in it, it just like takes a life of its own and it's like your baby and your passion now. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about, regenerative, because we were talking about regenerative cacao and that movement and what it is and why is it so important to have this other lens besides organic or, being to like what you said to like shelf and farm. And how is that different than all the other types of, ceremonial cacaos and or any kind of, other labels that are out there for this industry?
Totally. Yeah, it's a good question. So regenerative as a whole really is a step beyond organic, right? Organic is really saying it's still monocropped, but they don't use chemicals and it's different to traditional in that sense. But as we've seen, why I got into this space was because every so often we hear some piece of data that is quite scary. And I remember I heard a few years ago something about, we have 40 or 50 cycles of top layer, like of soil that can actually produce food left on this planet. And then we don't have food. And when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, like what are we waiting for? Like are we waiting till we have three cycles left? Like I just couldn't comprehend. So I think within this field of sustainability, environmental action, everyone finds their role. And I've decided to go super niche with it because, I can focus on food as a whole, but luckily I have my roots in chocolate, and that's really where I can be most effective. So I came across the term regenerative agriculture maybe 5 or 6 years ago. When it was kind of just starting up, I don't even think that there was any brands actually doing it. But really the concept of regenerative, it has three main pillars. So one is how you manage the actual produce in the soil and the topsoil. So there's multiple facets of it, but in a nutshell, it means you don't do tilling because tilling destroys the roots and the connections that are in the soil to actually make the soil come alive. Um, there's no chemicals, of course. There's intercropping. So instead of just monocropping cacao, you do cacao beside pineapple, beside guava, and then you follow a scheme depending on where you're growing it and what best benefits the soil and what your goals are with the soil as well. And yeah, there's other components to this as well. And then there's the animal welfare section as well. And then there's the social equitability. So, pertaining to fair trade. What's the other? There's a couple of them that follow that, but just making sure that the farmers are getting what they deserve for cultivating those products. So yeah, once I learned about what regenerative really means, I started to push our manufacturers and said, okay, because we have to depend on our manufacturers to also source the beans. Sometimes we go direct, but in our chain for efficiency, we work with other people who source. And I started to expose the idea, and a lot of them didn't even know what it was. They're like, "What even is this concept?" So slowly, 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 we're able to build these projects out, and I've partnered with really amazing people. I went on a trip last year with Dr. Bronner's to Ivory Coast, and they're doing an incredible effort there as well. They really, yeah, they put a lot of their own investment into developing farms and then sharing those resources, which is very rare in the food space. But yeah, so I've slowly started to grow that space in regenerative, and I really believe in it. I really believe that there's a lot of potential there. And if we can focus, even just if it's in cacao, on these more sustainable practices, we're going to eliminate a lot of issues that we're seeing. And maybe I can talk about that later, but some of the issues that we're seeing in cacao.
I think that's really fascinating, that there's a way that we've been farming for, more recent like history versus like centuries, right? And we're just bringing back those practices that like were there a long time ago back to, current times. And I want to know like what kind of I guess not resistance, but like challenges do these farmers face, like reverting their crops back from monocrops to a more regenerative, sustainable way of doing things, and how have people like seen the benefits of shifting, and what kind of benefits do they see?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's definitely, I think the biggest thing is, farming, it's usually a generational thing as well. It's like, okay, your dad did it, your grandpa did it, your mom did like and that's how you learn. You learn from what, past people, past generations did. And, I was just in Colombia, which we're going to show this video later. And there was a few, Aboriginal tribes there that I mentioned the term regenerative, and they're like, what even is that? Because that's just the way that they do things, right? They never got this more industrialized form of agriculture. But really, there's challenges when it comes to it's a risk, right? A lot of farmers, if they don't hear it from other farmers or from their buddies that it worked out well, they don't care to listen to someone above, because for them it's like, oh, they don't even understand really what we do, right? And the hardships and the things that we go through. But it's really communicating to them that even though, for instance, even if they're not planting monocrop cacao, there's actual division, right? So for them in their mind, they're like, well, now we're planting less of what we need to cultivate. And cacao is a higher priced item as well than, let's say, a banana. Um, but it's helping them understand what state we're at in our planet, in our agriculture. If they continue that way, they're seeing diseases, they're seeing less yield, they're seeing all these things every single year. It gets worse and worse. So it's helping them understand we have to think long term. We can't think short term of, what am I going to get this harvest? It's understanding that in the future, you're going to have, healthier cacao, and you're also going to have diversification. So you have income from multiple streams, you're more resilient, and you're feeding your soil in a way that it's going to last the test of time. And your neighbors who are practicing traditional or even organic aren't going to see that benefit in the long time. But it's an education, and it's also a trust and a confidence that they need to have in the system.
I I think it's so important for people to understand that, we are so depleting, like you said, the soil, and that's why it's so important to have all the different diversity and having different crops on the land so that they can go ahead and make money from the other different crops. Can you share a little bit? I think we talked about this when I was talking to you like a few weeks ago, about um the process that a farmer has to take in order to become a regenerative farm. I think that's very fascinating, and the steps that they need to take, because it's not just an overnight thing where it's like, oh, we're just
Mm.
gonna plant other trees and we're just going to like become regenerative. But like, what is that process like for the farmers so they can understand? So everybody like here can understand what it takes to become a regenerative farm, a regenerative source.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. There's definitely stages, and I'm not the expert when it comes to this. I'm, more forward facing towards the market, but I've learned through these trips and through my own interests on what goes on. But if you're a traditional farm, I don't know the exact number, but I think you have to leave it anywhere from 4 to 7 years untouched. You cannot touch the soil with any chemicals. So there's that lag period between stopping chemicals and then actually being able to be certified organic. And they test, actually, if I just learned, they test the leaves. That's the one that actually contains the most chemicals. So they can test, even if someone accidentally sprayed or some spray got on it, they can test through the leaves, which is actually, I found it fascinating. But there's that process. And then when it comes to regenerative, you have to be organic, A. So you're not putting any chemicals on, or at least the ones that are not approved by organic. And then there's stages when it comes to regenerative. So the rock certification, there's bronze, silver, and gold. So they have this all, on their website, and we can share some of these resources as well for people who are interested. But it follows, there's an understanding that things take time, and they want to merit the farmers and the plots of land that are working towards something really incredible and sustainable, but they understand that it takes time to do so. These are plants, especially with cacao, like there's 2 times a year there's harvest. Other ones it's 1 time a year. So it's understanding that these things take time. But there definitely is an understanding for what it takes, and a compromise, I guess, as well.
Yeah, there's so many steps to this, and it's not an overnight thing, which is why you keep on saying it, that it's a long-term game, and we have to focus on like the long-term results. And I would love to go ahead and play the video so people can see like what you're talking about. So just give me a second to queue up everything. But if you want to, as I'm queuing it up, do you want to share some resources for people, or in terms of like where they can find out more about regenerative, or how they can like get
Yeah.
involved? And then I'll queue up the video.
The main, so if you just do, regenorganic.org, that's the Regenerative Organic Certified, so ROC, and they're the main resource for all this information and what it really takes to get there. But really, I would also say to follow brands that are doing regenerative products, such as Dr. Bronner, such as Patagonia Provisions. There's so many brands now that are really, Simply is a great one. But if you follow them, they're obviously trying to market their item that is regenerative. So yeah, they share a lot of abundant resources and supporting them as well in what they're doing with our purchasing power.
Amazing. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and share the video. So we're gonna go ahead and play it.
Porque, bueno, yo amo el chocolate y quiero tener próximas generaciones, quiero que también disfruten de hacer chocolate y vender chocolate, y todo empieza con ustedes. One get to everything that you eat and that you consume for this land and these people.
Las personas que están trabajando en no orgánico se pasen al orgánico, porque de esa manera nosotros vamos a poder conservar mucho más nuestro planeta. Que las personas hablan ahorita de cambio climático y todo lo demás, pero se necesitan hacer acciones que realmente beneficien el tema del medio ambiente. Y esa es una. O por aquí iniciamos para llegar entre más personas se unan y empiecen en ese proceso, más área protegida vamos a tener, mejores suelos. Entonces, por eso digo, ojalá se sumen más. Y la parcela Mares o la finca Mares, cuando mi familia y yo llegamos aquí hace ya varios años, nosotros en 2019 tuvimos un siniestro que lo ocasionó algunos de los vecinos porque tienen prácticas que no son muy amenas con lo ecológico. Pero entonces nosotros, a raíz de eso, fue que iniciamos e implementamos todo el proceso para llegar a un suelo regenerativo, como lo están viendo hoy. La evidencia de que tuvimos el siniestro es que aquí se nos quemaron 4 hectáreas de cacao, y a partir de ese siniestro nosotros empezamos nuevamente, la Secretaría de Agricultura del municipio y Asopraur, que es nuestra asociación, nos ayudaron con 550 plantas para sembrarlas, que ya son las que ustedes pueden ver en este momento, que este fue el primer lote que iniciamos. Pero esa es como la historia de nuestra finca, un tema de resiliencia donde dijimos no le vamos a apostar al tema regenerativo en el cultivo del cacao, porque sabemos que hay mucho futuro para nosotros aquí, de hecho.
¿Por qué amas tanto al cacao?
Que sí, eso es una pasión, pero sí, a mí me encanta lo que hacemos. Entonces no me fue difícil, ni a mí, ni a mi familia, ni a las personas que han trabajado con nosotros, porque estamos convencidos del el bienestar que estamos haciendo, no solamente para mí como productor, sino para la humanidad. Mis conocimientos eran de que había que cuidar el suelo, porque el suelo es un organismo, o son multiplicidad de organismos viviendo en determinada área, por decirlo de una manera, y que tiene vida. Entonces, en la medida en que nosotros hacemos las prácticas de agricultura regenerativa, le estamos dando a esa vida aún mayores condiciones para que siga vivo. Entonces, ese concepto es el que estamos trabajando, de que cuidar o trabajar en armonía con lo que tenemos, con nuestro medio ambiente, es lo que yo sabía y es lo que estamos aplicando.
En Estados Unidos es un mercado que es enorme, es grande, y hay mucha gente que está muy lista para los productos regenerativos. Y algunas tendencias que veo es que primero que la gente quiere tres cosas: productos que sean buenos para el medio ambiente, para las personas que lo cultivan y también para ellos mismos. Entonces saben que productos regenerativos están preparados para pagar más porque saben que existen todos esos beneficios. Nuestros clientes dependen en ustedes. Todo viene de regreso a ustedes.
Ese árbol, el yarumo, es muy importante para la regeneración, es un muy buen indicador de los ecosistemas porque él tiene varios servicios ecosistémicos. La tela del bosque. ¿Sí? Esto es pura materia orgánica, ¿no? Esto es el mantillo de bosque virgen. ¿Sí? Esto es el mantillo, porque es que esto no es suelo.
Sí.
Realmente esto es, mira que aquí hay descompuesto y aquí empiezas a encontrar un poco de hoja. Allí habíamos unos hongos grandotes que si nosotros nos ponemos a buscar, pues mira que ya empiezan a hacer. Y las mire, ¿sí ves? Entonces, estos hongos están creciendo acá y están descomponiendo la materia. Entonces, ese es el ciclaje natural que uno quiere.
Claro.
Entonces, nosotros nos llevamos todas esas cepas, como la semilla de este hongo,
Sí.
¿sí? La llevamos para los biopreparados y la reproducimos allá,
Claro.
para devolverles la semilla natural del suelo. O sea, si este es el suelo que tenemos aquí abajo en nuestro cultivo, pues también había este suelo.
Claro.
Entonces yo no estoy trasladando material vivo para ningún lado, estoy devolviendo el material de mi zona, o sea, que es lo más, que es el óptimo,
Claro.
que ya lleva miles de años aquí acoplándose. ¿Sí? Es muy difícil que volvamos a este punto, pero devolverle esa vitalidad que tenía, ¿sí? Esa vida que ha perdido durante tantos años. Y la mejor manera de hacerlo es cultivando pues, estas cepas de bacterias, hongos que tenemos aquí mismo para devolvérselo allá a los lotes productivos.
Ahorita lo estamos apretando mucho, estamos como corriendo, pero es por eso, porque ya hemos perdido mucho tiempo en implementar tantas cosas que podemos hacer.
Claro.
¿Sí? Y mirando desde ese punto, en minimizar los químicos de nuestro cuerpo y aportarle, porque con los huevos que vamos a comercializar, bajándole ese 30%, también le aportamos a otros tantos de personas, ¿cierto? Menos químicos.
Exacto. Y el
Entonces,
cacao que ustedes hacen.
Flores. Inclusive aquí tenemos menos densidad de siembra para darle espacio a los árboles que tenemos, porque normalmente esas son 800, 900 árboles, 1200 si es a tipo bolillo que hay en una hectárea, pero nosotros aquí tenemos apenas alrededor de 700 a 800 plantas por hectárea.
Es difícil, pero se puede lograr. La economía circular, a pesar que se ve tan grande, poco a poco se puede ir haciendo, no es a un corto plazo, es a largo plazo y teniendo el apoyo, y eso es lo que pedimos. Pedimos apoyo en cuanto a cursos complementarios, asistencia, ¿cierto? En este caso, como ustedes. Eso es un apoyo y una motivación más para seguir con esto. ¿Y todo a qué? Para el bienestar, la salud, la nutrición de todas las personas. Porque todo esto a la final a nosotros es los que nos beneficia. a la madre tierra y al cuerpo humano.
Gracias a Dios que la naturaleza es resiliente, porque, o sea, nadie aguanta tanto daño, pero ella sí, y antes nos premia. Mira que después de tantos años, pues, de todo lo que hicimos tradicionalmente, mira que o sea, estamos produciendo y tenemos árboles y la tierra es negrita y está nutrida, a pesar de todos los daños que se hacen.
Mucha gratitud. Definitivamente desde mi corazón, muchas gracias por consumir el producto que desde Colombia nosotros producimos para ustedes. Algún día puedan tener la oportunidad también de venir acá a conocer todo lo que nosotros los agricultores hacemos para producir este producto tan delicioso. Por acá, bienvenido siempre.
That was so beautiful. Um, I think
Thank
it's so important to like see the work that you're doing and helping to you know, champion this movement to the farmers and allowing them to understand how important it is to do this work. And one of the things that I loved that the video highlighted was towards the end, they were talking about like consumers also have a choice. And I think that's where we need to talk about our conversation as well. It's not just understanding the regenerative portion from the farming side, but at the end of the day, it's very consumer focused, and we also need to educate the consumers on this end so that help we can help buy those products and bring that forward and bring that change. So can you talk a
you.
little bit about your purpose of the trip and then also how us as consumers can support this process through our own purchasing power?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's super interesting actually, even just rewatching the video now, like I remember how many farmers are so keen to know this information, right? But they just like they want to do better, but they just don't know, right? So when this information is shared, there's so many that we attended a school like a field day essentially, where there was maybe around 30 or 40 farmers that were all there and keen to learn. We're learning about they call them the direct translation is bio prepared, but like basically like a compost system specific for cacao, and that helps it grow really well. And they're really keen to learn, right? They're taking time out of their schedule to do that and to implement these changes. So if they have that education there, they really are very willing. But I went to this trip specifically to speak at that conference that you saw in the video. And it was really to show the farmers who's buying, this. Not that I'm the only person, but to represent the US buying market and so that they know that that there are buyers, right? Like they don't want a big fear that they have is that they're going to go through all this effort and then how it works in cacao and I'm sure in every other food product as well. If it doesn't sell at the premium of cacao, right? Because there's a base price of cacao that's determined by the London Exchange. It's a publicly traded commodity. And then there's premium. So there's a fair trade premium, there's an organic premium, there's a regenerative premium, and all of these start to add up. And those are directly given to the farmer. So the farmer sees those benefits. However, if it does not sell at an organic or a regenerative, if there's no buyers for it, it sells at conventional prices, right? It just gets thrown into the lot. So that's a fear that they have too. right? That they're going to go through all the effort and not see the reward. So my job was to say, no, that there is a market. I'm representing all of us to say that there really is a market. And like I said at the end of that video, I see it every single day. Like my buyers only want to have and stock products on shelves that we're going to consume, which makes sense, right? That's their business, especially if it's private label. They don't really like to take risks. When it's other brands and it's not their name on it, they'll stock it and see what happens, right? But if they're going to buy into a topic such as regenerative, such as anything, refined sugar free, whatever it might be, they need to have confidence that there's going to be buyers. So everything in my world is driven by my buyers. So, and my buyers, B, go off of what we as consumers are going to consume and purchase. So, we've all heard it many times, but we really have so much say in what we purchase. If they see, regenerative chocolate, whether it's Ultra Eco or Dr. Bronner's or what other brands are doing it, skyrocket, they're like, hey, we want a part of that as well, right? And we're the ones who drive that. It's the easiest way to make a difference is to consider what we're purchasing. And on the topic of pricing, because I know that's something that people have resistance to or questions about, I'll say at least what I intend to do in my world. And even though it's small, I hope it works and I hope it can inspire other systems as well. Yes, in the short term, regenerative is going to be more expensive. Just like 25 years ago, organic was more expensive than traditional, right? Because it's new, there's changes, there's added elements. But long term, right, what's happening with cacao right now, in the last 6 months, the price of cacao 3 to 4x the price of the actual bean. And the reason for that is supply and demand. There's diseases, and I think diseases last year wiped out 30 to 40% of the yield. And we're already at a deficit. So meaning that every year there's more contracts sold than actual yieldable cacao. So that already drives up the market. Now we have this decrease because of what's going on environmentally. And the reason these diseases are going around is really because it's monocropped, right? So the pesticides aren't going to help these diseases. The diseases go into the actual cacao and eat it. But when it's a monocrop field, as we can imagine, it's endless. They go everywhere. But if we create this diversity and these methods, such as, I don't know the specifics, but there's things about where you put even just like the leaves, how you drop them, and how these bugs mulch on the leaves instead. There's all these systems in place that people that are deep into it already know how to do. If we can focus our energy into that, these diseases have less of a shot of taking the cacao that is healthy and that can be used. So that's really the focus here is, how can we see what's already happening and implement systems that are for the long term? And on a business side, as well as how can we as manufacturers, as the middlemen, I'm considered a middleman in what I do, in terms of manufacturing, how can we be more efficient? I think for so many years, farmers have gotten the short end of the stick on everything, right? There's these super high priced items and the farmers don't see any benefit to this, increased or this better for you item, right? But if we can be more efficient in the middle in terms of how many hands it touches, because every time it moves to a different facility or a different processor, that's margins that these processors need to take. So if we can be more efficient, we leave more for the farmer and we're at a price that's competitive with every other item on the shelf. So that's really my focus here in terms of an administrative side of things is really how to make it viable so that we're not, I don't want people to pay $20 a chocolate bar. I don't think that that's reasonable either, but still not just because we need to drop the price, it doesn't mean that it should come from the farmers. It should come from us in the middle.
I think that's such a great point. Like people are price sensitive, especially in this economy right now that we're in. But we also have to understand like our impact of voting with our dollars. And and being able to make these conscious choices for the long-term future. I know, in our communities, like the spiritual communities, we love our cacao. So we have cacao
Really.
ceremonies. We like, and just imagine if we just didn't have it, or it was no longer available, or there's a lot of diseases, and a lot of people love chocolates just in general, even if they don't do cacao ceremonies. So we have to start thinking about that. And I loved your point that we still want to leave enough for the farmers, and we don't want to price gouge, the consumer. So how do we fix this larger macro issue that we have here? So those are some like really important points that you brought up. But I would love to go back and focus on the consumer part is how do we know what's regenerative? How do we start looking for it? How do we start demanding it? How do we, start being a part of the change and supporting this process where we are getting more better for you type products in the stores, and so that we can actually purchase them?
Yeah, for sure. It's a great question. And it's multifaceted as well. There's so many ways that we can go about this. The first one is really so just like any term in sustainability, there's a lot of greenwashing, there's a lot of things being said out there, like I think a lot of people have caught on to the fact that it's growing, and it's trendy and it's all these things and they want to benefit from them. If there's no certification, you really can't know unless if you're at honestly if you're at a farmer's market, right? Like because we see farmers markets that aren't certified organic, but they say we're no spray, right? You can talk to farmers and a lot of them already know at farmers markets, especially in California, where we're in a very lucky region where we have access to so many farmers and farms and produce directly. So that's an amazing ways to support them directly. That's A. And B, we can ask those questions. And a lot of them are implementing systems, some of them without them even really knowing that that's what regenerative means. And a lot of them, it's expensive to become certified. So if you're buying produce, if you're buying at lower scale and more direct, you can have those conversations and ask them. And don't just write it off if they're not, regenerative organic certified. But if you're on shelves, if you're at Whole Foods, if you're at any grocery store, those brands have money. Like they have money to be on that shelf, to do their marketing, to do everything. So anyone there that's claiming regenerative, but there's no certification, I would be wary of because I've seen it already that they claim different things. But if you see that certification, purchase it and try it. If you don't like it, because we can't all like everything and we can't just buy things because we need a support and but we can make like we as consumers are at the top of the food chain. Everything in business is for us. So if we can support, if we don't like something, if we want to see something modified, we talk to the consumers, brands listen, especially private label. If you talk to, 365 to Whole Foods, if you talk to Erewhon, if you talk to all these brands, they care to hear what customers want and what they desire, if it's flavored differences, if it's recipe different, whatever it is. So we don't need to be afraid, of those conversations as well. That's how we make a difference as consumers in a field that is so vast, that it's hard to know. When I'm in a grocery store, when I'm at Whole Foods, like, how am I going to make a difference? That's how you make a difference.
That you said, that we have to give our feedback and our voice as well too, either to the farmers directly or to the stores, letting our voices be known, because that's how brands know. I used to work in CPG, so we did lots of, and we were always interested in what the consumer would buy. So like you said, it's really, really important in order to do that. Let's talk a little bit about, the retailers and the industry and like the market trends and of regenerative chocolate. How can it become, a priority for them? I know that consumers are the key, but are there other factors that we need to think about in this larger scale or larger grand scheme of this whole ecosystem in this industry to have it be a priority and an issue that they follow, just like we did with organic?
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think big brands have a really big say. So we see brands like, yeah, I mean, when Dr. Bronner's or Alter Eco or Kettle and Fire that does the bone broth, they now have a regenerative offering as well. I'm good friends with one of the sales rep at Kettle and Fire, and he's amazing because he connects all these brands and saying, okay, like we all have the same goal. We're in different categories, but we all retail, let's say at Whole Foods, right? So they go to Whole Foods and they say, an end cap is, for people who don't know, at the end of a grocery store, it's like the front facing side. So they get a lot of shelf, there's a lot of foot traffic. So it's a more desirable location in a grocery store. So they'll say, you know what, let's do a regenerative end cap, and it'll feature all these different brands, right? But that's from the inside out. Whole Foods already sees the numbers that Kettle and Fire puts out or that Dr. Bronner's puts out. So by teaming up, they're saying, you know what, let's put maybe our personal brand identity even aside, and let's promote this method, of farming that we bought into, that we want people to buy into, and putting that greater good before. And these retailers respond to that, right? Because it's it's a mix. You can't say that retailers are only numbers driven, right? Because there's some people in there that really care and that care to bring these things forward and understand the position that they're in. But we also can't assume that everyone is like that. So it's a mix of logic, of understanding what we're really doing, and getting to people's hearts, knowing like we're not going to have food, we're not going to have the cacao ceremonies, we're not going to have cacao in the way it's trending if we continue the way that we're going. So buying into that side of people's hearts and minds, and then having the numbers there as well to support what we're doing.
Yeah, I think it's really important to band together, like all the brands, like you said, to make it more known for people and to really promote it and work together to say, okay, this is a movement that we're standing behind, and we're gonna do whatever it takes to get there. And I used to work for a CPG company, I'm not gonna say which one, that did some chocolates, not organic, not, well, I'll just
Yeah.
say not organic. It's a big, well-known brand,
Yeah.
And I remember like when we had a crisis in the Ivory Coast, this was back in 2011, 10, 11, 10. There was like and there was like a shortage of chocolates. And so I think also like letting the manufacturers, or the not the manufacturers, sorry, the big companies know that, hey, you're not going to have any supplies anymore. Like that's going to
Exactly.
be like a big selling point, and these big companies are going to look at their bottom line. And if we have no chocolate to sell, then what are we going to do? So I think that's also really important. And I love how you keep on bringing back like, hey, we're not going to have a food supply. We're not going to have all the things that we were just so accustomed to, in order if we don't start making a change right now. Um, how can people get involved in this besides buying, like, and learn more about regenerative? I know you gave a resource, but are there other ways that we can support as consumers into this movement? And also, where do you see the future of regenerative cacao specifically, since you're in that industry?
Yeah. How to get involved. Well, we do a regenerative potluck every month. It's a free potluck at Mudwater, and it's called the Regenerative Potluck. So we focus on regenerative food systems, bringing, you don't have to bring regenerative food, but the highest quality you can bring is preferred. And we added an educational component as well. So every month we have a speaker that touches on different topics. And something that's big about regenerative that I haven't mentioned is it's it's more than just, in my opinion, it's more than just a system or a way of agriculture. It really is a cultural shift, and it applies to so many different things, right? The way that we're regenerating our bodies, our relationships, our soil, our businesses. It's all the same mentality. It's different than sustainability. Sustainability is we sustain what we have, right? But unfortunately, I think we've caused a lot of mess in different categories that if we sustain that, I don't know if we're headed in the right direction. So regenerating is really reconstructing systems. And it's a cultural shift to say, let's not go towards the most convenient thing. Let's not go towards the easiest thing. Let's really understand why we need to reconstruct. And, everyone has their own thing that affects them and that gets their fire going, and that, they're like, okay, I have to pay attention now. For me, it's food. I don't want to be without food. I don't want any of us to not have food. So really that's what affects me and that's what keeps me going. But yeah, it definitely is, you know, these big brands, they need to know as well, right? That it's and it's a difficult position because we're in a market right now that is it's brutal right now. It's a really tough market, but there's a part of me that's happy, you know, because it's like this is rebuilding the way that we need to do things. Now the market price is at around 7,600 a kilo or a ton, sorry. And before it was 2,200 a ton. So that's the price for farmers. Mind you, every region is different. In Ivory Coast, unfortunately, the government intervenes a lot. So there's a chunk of that that goes to the government. But in places like Colombia, where I just was, that's what the farmer gets paid. So that the market itself is saying, okay, if you're not going to fix this as humans and you're not going to pay the farmers more, like we're going to do it naturally by supply and demand. And now we have to adjust, and these big brands have to listen to what's going on as well. And what I see in the market, there's everyone's struggling to get their hands on the inventory that they need. But you know, maybe that's just what we need to have people listen. And I mean, like I forgot the second question.
It was what's the future do you see with like
Yeah.
cacao as well too?
Yeah, I see the future has to be, you know, it's hard to say if it has to be regenerative. It has something needs to change, you know, in the way that we produce. I've jumped on the regenerative bandwagon because there's momentum now and people understand it, but I think it's a great next step. I'm not saying it's the be all end all solution, but it's a great next step above organic. And yeah, I'm adamant on the fact that if we don't start to do something now, we're going to continue to see declines. And luckily, cacao is an optional food, right? There's not like we're going to die without cacao. But that being said, people enjoy it and it makes people happy, you know, and it brings a lot of joy. So, like I said in the video, I love cacao. I love working in cacao. I love consuming it. I love sharing it with people. I love the joy that it brings. And you know, I wouldn't want it to see it go away because we're not being intelligent enough to look a few steps ahead. And I think that in all categories of life as well. So yeah, how can we think more long term and do the research and stay open to new options as well and new potential ways to solve this.
I also love what you shared around you know the part where oh wait, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, I'm just thinking, there was
Okay.
a
Too
part
much
that I
information.
really loved what you shared. Oh, about like you know, oh shoot, sorry, I'm just like losing my train of thought right now, but there was like a really, really good part that you shared. And I had a point around it because um sorry, I'm going back
No worries.
trying to remember. I'm like, what is I had this like brain freeze before all of a sudden that's a brain freeze. Um but I'm trying to recall it now, but I guess it's not that important if I can't remember it.
Yeah.
But
They'll
but
come back.
oh, it'll come back. But I think one of the things that is important to mention, oh yeah, yes, regenerative versus sustainability. That's what it was. Okay,
Mm,
this is very
yeah.
important. Because like, you know, food is what regenerates like our cells, are like what we put into our body versus like the sustainability, like you said, is just maintaining, and we're not always maintaining the right things, and we're not putting the right things in our body. And I loved how you phrase that, because it also made me think about, you know, the nutrients that are in the food that we have. And I remembered like a study that I had a roommate who was like a nutritionist, not nutritionist. She, I forgot what she did. But basically it was around nutrition and understanding nutrition. And she was saying that like a bowl of spinach, there was a study in like the 90s, is you know, half the value nutritionally as, you know, a bowl that was from the 50s, and you would have to eat 10 bowls of spinach to get the same nutritional value.
Yeah.
And I think that's also an important part, because if we are sustaining, like we said, you know, the crops being like the monocrops, and like doing the way that we've been farming and making it sustainable, we're not adding nutrients into our body through the food that we're eating. And I think that's really an important point of why regenerative is such a big movement because we want to put the nutrients into the food that then nourishes our body as well.
Hmm.
So I think
Definitely. Yeah, and
something.
we know so many benefits of, yeah, the amount of nutrition that comes from plants grown in regenerative methods is tremendous. It's such a difference. And yeah, we're beyond the point of sustaining, maybe if we get back to a place that's healthier for the planet, we can use sustainability again, but it really is reconstructing so that it feeds our soils and in turn the soils feed us. It's a very, symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, I love this. What would you say, like, last, like, words of wisdom, if you want, the last thing that you want to, like, have people take away from this conversation about regenerative or regenerative cacao, like, what would it be? Like, what do you want people to, like, really take home as a key takeaway?
Hmm. I would say to slow down because we're so overwhelmed with so many different things. I work in food, so my brain is in food a lot. But I'm like we were saying with Minland, my brain's not in tech. My brain's not in how vehicles are made, how everything else is made. We have to slow down and not put pressure on, when we're so overwhelmed, how can we don't have the energy to slow down to make those critical decisions, and to ask those questions and to make better choices when we're so in the craziness of life. But if we just slow down, and we give ourselves the opportunity to make these better choices, there's so much information out there. There's people working on it day in, day out. The people that work in this like are so dedicated to making this happen, and that exists all around us, in every industry. But if we can just take a moment to understand the power that we have in every choice that we make, I think we'll start to see a lot of change, piece by piece.
I love that advice. It's so true when we could slow down and just really go back to like their roots as well and just, pay attention to like what's also feeding us in our bodies and just
And
what's
why are we doing all this,
exactly the whys. And that's so important for us. I just want to thank you so much for what you're for being here, first of all, but also for what you're doing in the space of regenerative because it is so important for people to understand what it is, b like you're actually helping also the farmers understand what it is and you're really impacting our food supply and it's no easy feat for like somebody to do but you're really pushing forward and doing it and making a change and I know that it's going to have such a positive impact on this world especially in the cacao industry and I just want to really thank you from the bottom of my heart for the work that you do and the passion that you bring and the knowledge that you bring and for sharing your wisdom today with all of us today. So
Thank you,
much.
Minling. Thank you for inviting me on, and I hope this information serves. And when I say cacao, it applies to every other food, item as well. Everything coming from the soil is under the same umbrella and the same boat here. Differences, but as a whole, so we really have, yeah, we have a lot of work to do, but there's a lot of good momentum. And thank you for creating this platform in Link where we can share, what we're working on and inspire people and get the conversation going, even further. We have an amazing community in LA and all around us. So if we can tap into that, it's pretty amazing what we can do.
Yes, and it's just a ripple effect, we just start at the beginning and we just have to keep on spreading the ripple and you are spreading the ripple and it's gonna grow. So I just can't wait to see it transform the way that we eat our food or make our food and think about food. And so thank you
Mm.
again.
Well, thank you so much.